So what I'm sharing is that, with, one of the questions that I think Kurt had in terms of Rotary. So we have clubs, and our clubs are rolled up into districts, and there are 520 districts around the world. And so your district is here to support you, to help you with training and kind of answer your questions. Those districts are rolled up into zones, and so we're in zone 29, which pretty much goes up from like just the bottom of Canada down to Texas. And then those zones are compiled into regions. And then kind of, you have Rotary International. And so each layer has sort of different committees. So we have a membership committee at the district. There's a membership committee at the zone. There's a membership chair kind of at the region. So there are so many layers on each kind of that we have resources for. So again, if you don't find things that you need at the district, we can get them from the zone and things like that. I wanted to show you this sheet because it essentially shows you that this was last year and we are District 5950. It wasn't until I was president that I even knew what our district number was. And the way I kind of remember it is like it's 5950, like 50, 50 and fabulous. So it's kind of 5950. 5960 is over on St. Paul. I have envy over District 6000. That's Iowa. Because like who wouldn't just love round numbers? So it's much easier for us to remember. But we're 5950. So you can see that again. We lost 55 members last year as a district. This year we're up five. Until December, we were actually up in the 20s, but lost some in December. So we're working hard there. But you can see that as a zone as a whole, last year we lost 915 people, which is pretty massive. And I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom to the summary of all the districts. So these are 520 districts that they have, or 524. You can see that last year as a whole, Rotary lost about 19,000 people on a net basis. Now we're getting in a lot of new members, but because the old members are leaving faster, and some of it is through death and attrition and job change, it's been really hard to keep up. And you can see that right now this year, we're up 20,000 as a whole, but sometimes that changes by the end of the year as well. So that gives you perspective on that. So let me just share my screen now with this. Let me go.
Sharon, can I ask a question?
Oh, of course.
Does that report include Rotaract?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. They are still struggling to incorporate Rotaract's numbers into Rotary, even though 2 years ago, for everybody's reference, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, Rotary International said Rotaract is really now part of Rotary. We're going to include their numbers and really include them as voting members, and then took off the age limit on a Rotaract club so that they wanted to combine it. I think it's probably again because they wanted it raise the numbers. So they said essentially Rotary went from 1.2 million to 1.4 million people, which is why you hear sometimes when we say there's 1.4 million Rotarians around the world, and that's because it includes Rotaract. But they're still struggling to get all of those numbers online properly. So when you look at Rotary going forward, I always say that when people ask about, oh, well, these days younger people don't want to join things and they want to do kind of charitable things by themselves. And why on earth would somebody want to join Rotary instead of kind of the new environment of just giving where they want to? And I always tell people it's because when you join Rotary, you get 1.4 million new friends that you can network with and that can help you and you can form friendships with. And 1.4 million is bigger than anybody's armies. So the ability to kind of get some movement and help. There isn't anything in the world you can't accomplish with 1.4 million people. And so the opportunity is there. And it only took sort of a couple of people got together and said, well, let's eradicate a disease around the world. And that's how the polio eradication started. And the thought where, again, there was 400,000 cases around the world. And if it had not had the effort done by Rotary and then all of its partners ultimately, it would have spread like wildfire. So the world would be very, very different with polio now. And so it's tremendous. And it only takes, so for example, if all of us on this call said, we now want to do this together, it only takes one group to get together to then start spreading it around the Rotary world to say, this is what we want to do. And So again, so the ability to tie into a network is really important. The other part is that Rotary has a $2 billion foundation, and their goal today was to hit, they wanted it was called 2025 in 2025. So they wanted to be at 2.025 billion, which they're going to hit this year. Which is amazing. So again, that you know, Rotary will survive for you know, decades and centuries beyond us, just because of the size of the foundation that we have. So even if we are shrinking, there will still be so much good to do in the world in Rotary. So I would say that again, that when people say, oh, you know, Rotary's sort of, you know, turn the corner, is kind of declining. Well, it's really not, because we've never had more money ever in our history of Rotary. And what I've always told my club, club number 9, I said, even if we're left with 2 people standing in our club, we have 5 million to spend. We're going to have a great time, you know, for the rest of our lives in our club. So again, it would be a shame to not have a lot of Rotarians in our club, but at the same time, number 9 will carry on. Oh, go ahead, Giro.
Yeah, question. The 2 billion you speak of, this is the Rotary International Foundation. It does
Correct.
not include like clubs like us with the 5
No.
million. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know. I know. I wish we could add all of the other foundations that all clubs have as well, and together to add to that. But no, that's just the foundation. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. So again, so I always say that, you know, when it comes to, and then the same way I gave you the perspective of when I visit many clubs talk about their history or what they did or the number of members they had, and feel everybody's always a judge of themselves, or they judge themselves too harshly. Because I can tell you from organizations outside of us, when they see we have 1.4 million, you know, we have kind of the $2 billion foundation, and they're struggling with declining as well. I can tell you that when you look at the Kiwanis or the Lions or other organizations, they look at us and we are the absolute beauty queen. You know, they are jealous of Rotary and what Rotary does today, and the significance we have. And when your international president, Stephanie Urchik, when they go around in their years, they meet with heads of state in different countries. They meet with the Pope. You know, that Rotary is as relevant as it always was, and it's as respected as it always was. And so I always smile and always say, you know, if you have the perspective from the outside, we are absolutely the one that people are jealous of. So, but let me share some of these statistics with you because they're really, really important. And this is where you will be able to specifically help your club and help Rotary long term. So this kind of showed you, I did this in the beginning of the year, and it shows you the attrition in the different areas in Rotary. So you can see that Australia and New Zealand, kind of since 2015 and kind of 2024, you know, they're down about 30% as a region. Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, mainland Europe and Africa and Middle East, it's really pretty much Africa and the Middle East is kind of staying fairly steady. You can see Asia is growing. India is the fastest growing area in Asia. And then you can see UK and Ireland is down 33%, Latin America is down 9%, and the US, Canada, and the Caribbean is down 20%. So on average, again, it's 6% down, but only because, again, the Asia region, it has so many, you know, has such high totals in terms of actual numbers, and that they're growing. But this next statistic is really frightening. And it essentially says that if we stay on the same trajectory, so if we stay at the same amount of attrition, then Australia, New Zealand really won't have Rotarians in 20 years. The UK and Ireland also won't have Rotarians in 20 years, and the USA won't have Rotarians in about 40 years. So if you think about it, I mean, that's, you know, that is during our lifetimes, that Rotary, as in terms of what it has, the kind of the community on the ground, you know, will essentially extinguish itself within 40 years. Which would be terrible. Now, again, Rotary will never go away because it has a massive foundation. But the future of Rotary may well be like the Gates Foundation, where you have maybe 20 people who are working on kind of giving the money away and kind of managing it like a family foundation, versus the difference that Rotarians have on the ground. And so I've asked many clubs to really think about things and think about a world without your Rotary Club. So, for example, and I'll just stop sharing, I'll reshare in a second. So when I went to St. Cloud, the very first time I spoke to St. Cloud, which is a big club, the lights went out, and it was in a room that was had no windows. So it was pitch black. But I carried on because I thought I just couldn't tell if they were sleeping or not during my talk. But I was very happy to carry on. And when I went back and visited them a couple of months ago, I actually took eye masks with me, and I made them all wear them. And I said, essentially, you know what I sound like. You don't necessarily know what I look like because of me talking with the lights off. But I asked them all to imagine a world without them in their community, the impact that they have on the schools around them, the children that didn't receive scholarships, the like pre-K kids that don't have a place that's paid for, and all of the different things. And we went through kind of 10 or 12 different things to really think about how important the fabric of a community of Rotary is. And when you disappear, how many things disappear with you? And so that really is the kind of the impetus for why we want to really kind of remain as Rotarians. So last year, before I became district governor, I thought, well, the most useful legacy I can leave is figuring out kind of the solution to how we increase membership. Because other than Tom Gump's year, where he was able to kind of turn the tide and end up with a positive, almost every year in our district at the end of the year is a negative number. And again, we're no different. There's nothing wrong with our district. It's the same that every district around the world is experiencing. So what I did during my year prior to the DG year was go around and study the fastest growing areas and who was doing what and kind of looking for the silver bullet for membership or what we can do to change. And there were a few things that I learned. One is that if you have an area where demographics is on your side, so you're a growing environment, or you're a city where you have a lot of influx of people, like at Austin, Texas, or something where kind of you're growing exponentially, those just happen naturally and you can capture that. And so, believe it or not, I mean, there are some of our areas that we live in that are growing as a population that you should tie into. But the second idea, so if you weren't lucky enough with demographics or kind of population change, then this concept of a sub-club where you actually create a different kind of feel of a club within your club. So for example, Rotary did a $1 million survey, and they asked people who were not in Rotary what they wanted Rotary to look like in order to actually want to join it. And what they learned from that survey was that most people didn't want the tradition that Rotary has, like our club, we might sing, it's very formal, we have a speaker, so we sort of talk for about kind of 10, 15 minutes before it starts. We have a speaker, we sit down, and then pretty much everybody leaves, so there's not a lot of connection there. So the two things that people coming into Rotary wanted, one was they wanted fellowship, and so not necessarily speakers, but just really getting to know each other and creating that community and support. And the second one was doing service. And of course, my club, we do plenty of service, but it's throughout the year. And, it's not as if it's a weekly thing, whereas a lot of people really wanted to get kind of hands-on and do things. So instead of, if I went to my club and I said, okay, my club, we're a 112-year-old club, and I would like to not have speakers, so we're all going to just sit and talk, and then we're going to do service kind of every other week as well. Then 75% of my club would leave because they signed up for our original club and what our club was like. So the concept that came out of it was actually a district 6,000, which is right below us in Iowa. They said, well, gosh, there are so many people you exclude in your club by your meeting time. So, for example, our club that meets at noon means that probably doctors, dentists, teachers, other people just can't come and attend our club because it's impractical. And then, we're downtown in kind of the Minneapolis club, and sometimes, that's not practical as well. And so what these Iowa clubs did was that they found that the magic hour was 5:30 on a Tuesday evening, where they would have kind of a second club that would meet. You know, one week they would do fellowship, and then the second they would only meet twice a month instead of 4 times a month. And the second week was pure service. And what they found is when they did this, and it's not for your original club members, because your original club members joined your club. So for example, our club tried a evening brewery thing. We called it the Brutarians, but very few members of our club turned up. Well, of course they're not turning up. And so when we originally told our club, oh, we should have a club that's in the evening, they're like, oh, we already tried that. That doesn't work. Well, the fact is, it's not for your members, it's for new members that actually can't attend your club because it doesn't work for them. So you ask 1 or 2 members from your club to actually go out and ask your original club, everybody that you remember that they wish they were in the club, they actually, you know, maybe they couldn't afford the lunchtime cost, whereas the evening ones is usually you're just buying yourself a drink or a little snack, kind of where it meets. So there's a really different cost level. We find in Rotary, most of the cost is actually within is the food that we provide. So if you take the food out, then Rotary is actually much cheaper. And so what they said was that you know, they go back to the original members and say, okay, would your spouses like to join? Would your spouses or partners or family members like to join the more casual evening one? They went out to the rest of the community or to people that had looked at their club before but not joined because it was impractical, and said, would you like to join this one? So what happens is that the sub club is part of your club. So for example, they're all members of your main club, but they kind of meet on a more casual basis. But if you have a great speaker, obviously you invite them to come and attend your club, and they would pay for their lunch or their breakfast if they came and attended that. And you would also ask them to you know, if you want to do projects together or things like that. But it's a very different feel. And so it's a very clever way of, if you think about new Rotary may be a more flexible Rotary than old Rotary, but instead of having to blow up old Rotary, you're actually combining the two together. And what you're finding in Iowa is many of these sub clubs are actually growing to be bigger and more vital than the older clubs. But you didn't destroy the old club in order to do it. So it's very, very clever. And so that was a survey where they listened to things. So again, it's simply an extension of your existing Rotary Club. So for example, many years, for decades and decades, Rotary has always said to our clubs, please, can you open another club that's close to you? Like, open another one. Well, if we have declining membership in our own club, we have no time to go and create another one because we're trying to help our own club. And so if your membership numbers don't count for your club, then there really is an incentive there. So this is a very clever way, because it's part of your club. It actually is part of your numbers as well. So if you want to have other different clubs, you know, it could make it, it really blossoms your numbers. So and we'll send this to everybody, but again, there are kind of, you want to get it board approved by your main club. You want to assign a chair for the companion club. Usually the chair sits on the board of your main club, so you have kind of that structure. You say you define the due structure, which I'll talk about a little bit, and then again you recruit that. And I have much more in detail right now. All of your clubs were asked if you wanted to develop a sub club this year, because we're going through a whole training and support group every 2 weeks right now. And so if you think that you want to rethink about it for your club, then let me know and we'll add you to that meeting as well. Right now we have a core group of about 14 clubs that are going through this process. So again, the kind of the companion versus the chair, sorry, the champion versus the chair is that you know, you again do that. So I just want to cycle through because we have a lot through here. So yes, so Rotary dues. So yes, they pay dues. And the fairest way to do it is to figure out in your club, you just take the food cost out and keep it exactly the same. So for example, I think I have an example here. So if your original club, if your RI dues were $58.65, you have the same thing for RI dues for the sub club. You have the district dues are the same. So, and then your original club dues, you also keep them the same. But for example, the original club was a lunch club, that had kind of $250 in their dues for every kind of 6 months for lunch costs, and you take that out. So you can see the sub club is only about $200 instead of the original club is about kind of, $450. And the reason you do that is that you can tell so people worry about attrition. It's like, well, gosh, if the sub club is much cheaper, then we're going to lose all of our members to that one. Well, the truth of the matter is it's only food. And so if you tell your existing club, the only difference between the two is food, that you get to eat lunch and they're not eating lunch. And so everything is the same. So it doesn't create that. Iowa found that very few people actually move from one to the other because, again, they want to meet at a lunchtime or they want to meet at a breakfast time. They're not looking to be an evening club. So there's very little attrition between the two. And the truth of the matter is that many people, have difficulty. It's all about marketing. Is that with these sub clubs, they often meet in breweries or other social areas where they are buying drinks, they are buying snacks from the bar or a little sandwich or appetizers. And so actually, if you add up what they actually, what they pay in food, they actually do. So it's probably actually pretty equivalent, but the difference is that you get the choice whether you're going to buy those things versus being forced into kind of paying for lunch. And I saw there was just a little chat. Was there anything, Alexa, I needed to answer in the chat? Oh, perfect. Corey, yay! Hutchinson, love you. Thank you. We'll include you in that. Perfect. So let's carry on here. Yes, so if you have an extension, again, you amend your bylaws to reflect the second meeting time, the board representation and things like that. That's really, really nice. So this last area I'm going to go into is is going to be that's just more explanation of what it is, where again, you're all part of a Rotary Club together. You have 2 meeting times. Your snacks are usually provided and beer and wine are often available for purchase. Sometimes it's really about the kind of the socialization part as well, which is really great. And oh, thank you, G Ray. And so let me just go back here 1 second. Oops. Okay. Oopsie daisy. Yes. So then often that the younger professional couples often attend together. So I think the spouses of current members, again, I always said to them, kind of the first to join. My husband, he won't come to a Rotary Club pretty much unless it meets in a bar. He loves to meet his friends in a bar or when he goes and socializes with other groups. And so I know if ours met in a bar, he might turn up instead of our usual lunchtime. Many of the companion clubs, again, meet just twice a month. Which is very usual. And then often kind of members will attend each meeting. So that's not unusual. And then again, you just have one board that includes both of them. So they found in Iowa that 5:30 to 6:30 is a golden hour for companion clubs. And they found that many people would come there and then go on and do their family things afterwards, which was nice and easy. And so they did a lot. However, I would say that our presidents this year, so your current presidents, are an exceptional class of presidents. They're the nicest people in the world. They're really innovative, and they took the thinking about sub clubs way further than I thought anybody would as well. Oh yes, so Gregory, you said for spouses, do you charge separate dues or do you allow them to have a joint membership? No, it would be separate dues because your intention is that you're trying to get like a second member, dues paying member. However, if that works for your club, again, there is no true model for this. Make it your own. If you want to do a joint thing and it's a little cheaper, but at least you get 2 members, I wouldn't stand in the way of that. But it's different than often our existing clubs might have a joint member for spouses that's a little cheaper, and often they only count as 1 member. So you really want to build membership there. So if you think about collaboration, so if you think about that people love to collaborate, and it's all this modern Target X Lilly Pulitzer. So you have so again, if you look at kind of Target's thing, is that Lilly Pulitzer is kind of a women's line of clothing that's casual but really bright. And when they did their collaboration with kind of resort wear, you know, it crashed Target's website, and people stood in line for hours to get it. And so we see so many, we see singers doing collaborations now, and so many companies doing and products doing it, that it's really interesting. And Airbnb and Polly Pocket, you know, they had this, this is an actual place where you can stay as an Airbnb that's actually built like a whole Polly Pocket house, which I would love to go and visit, which is just really exciting. So what we say is that, you know, you take what's really successful. So our Rotary clubs are really successful, and then you cross it with, you know, with you know, something that is really different. So, for example, I will say, I would say a gardening club. So if I said, Sam, I would like a Diner Noon to start a Rotary sub club that's a gardening club. Many of you would look at me and say, wow, Sharon, you're really off your rocker. She's kind of crazy. Lucky we've got Mark Shockey instead of Sharon, because she's a little nutty. And I would tell you, au contraire, mon frère. The reason why this could be an incredible club is, if you think about it, your new sub club is going to meet twice a month. One is just fellowship. So we could go and visit all of each other's gardens. We could go to botanical gardens. There are 34,000 clubs around the world that you can go and visit their gardens as well. You know, your fellowship would be incredible. And then if you think about the service side of it, Singapore, which was the last international convention, is known as the garden city, because so many of the public areas are just beautifully manicured with flowers and plants. So the ability for you to do that within your city or town would be incredible. If you think about, if you go into areas that need a bit of sprucing up, but really, if you think about climate change, where so many people in agriculture are going to have to grow different things in different places, and there's going to be, you know, potential real disruption, that there many people will go hungry because of everything, that we can't always fight, you know, Mother Nature. Whatever your political persuasion is, we know that, you know, things change, and they always have historically. And so the thought is that this club could be, and the way Rotary unites people, because we're not political, and we include everybody, the ability to pull in nonprofits and research universities and for-profits to really say, okay, well, what about in Minnesota or our local farmers? I drove past so many farms going to all of your clubs. Is that, you know, what if we got involved in kind of figuring out, okay, you know, how can we help with some of the different things that have to be grown different places, or kind of the information that travels worldwide. So that tiny little Edina gardening club, which sounds like, whoa, that doesn't really fit in with Rotary, could be something absolutely spectacular and an offshoot of that. And so when I went round to the clubs, when I talked to our presidents, and then also kind of exposed some of this to your clubs as I went round, new ideas came up at every single club. I had a lady run up to me at the end of the Chaska one, and she said, oh, she said, I would love an art club. And I kind of sat there and I looked at her and I was like, well, how would that fit? And again, if you think about it from the fellowship perspective, well, gosh, you could do art together for fun. You could go to see all the beautiful art museums. I mean, you could go and so the incredible amount of things you can do from a fellowship perspective. And then from a service perspective, well, you could put murals on areas that need it. You could support kind of arts in the schools, arts for seniors, arts for kind of reducing mental health issues. I mean, it could be incredible. So you can see how it's not just that your club would meet at 5:30 on a Tuesday night. I mean, you could have sub clubs that relate to art or gardening. And I have more ideas here that have come up. You know, you can have, you know, again, like book clubs, you know, and you know, kind of design clubs. And so these were ideas that, I kid you not, came out of this you know, kind of this district of things that everybody thought about. They thought gardening club, art club, book club. So again, book club, you think, you know, everybody knows somebody who's in a book club, but how about a book club for good? That, you know, you in your fellowship, you do book club where you meet together and talk about books, but it could be delivering books to other countries, making sure that young people have access to books, all sorts of things. There's a music club, it's the same thing. Number 9 at night was you know, our idea of meeting in the evening. I had 2 clubs that wanted to create specific Indian community clubs. And it's because they have such an increasing Indian population in their cities that are really not entering their Rotary clubs very quickly. There was our club had an idea about a welcome club. Again, when you have people that move into Minneapolis, as a way to welcome people. There was a lot of things around beer clubs. St. Cloud was thinking about a teachers club, one that's specifically for teachers because they do so much around that. We already have a veterans club in our district, but if you think about it, there are so many veterans in Minneapolis, and the thought that probably each one of us could have a veterans sub club, also travel club, eco club, wine club, golf club, sailing club, technology club, foodie club. There are so many, and the world is your oyster. And so I would just say that if you look at your members and you think about what are most people interested in, what's most important to our particular community, for example, like a food club. If your community, if there are people that significantly, have issues with access to kind of food or have things like that, again, you can create that around doing something. I can tell you that. I'll stop sharing here a second. I just watched a documentary of. I fantasized about where you take the $1. And go and buy somewhere in southern Italy where you pay for $1 and then you get this thing because they want to increase populations there. And so I watched a little documentary on it because I always think I want to do it. Don't worry, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to be here with Rotary, but I watched it. And some of the ones went there and they talked about kind of how they rehabbed the design. But there was one gentleman from London who moved there, and he said that, he wanted to change his life from being in London. And so this is what he did. But at the same time, he said, I want to get to know my community. So what he did was he created a communal dinner in his Italian city, or town, every Sunday evening that everybody paid for, and all that money then went to feed those that couldn't feed themselves. And it was incredible. And I thought, gosh, what if we had food clubs within our clubs where we were creating these kind of large public displays of just good and being able to do that. So ultimately, with your sub club, it really is what fits for your club, what fits for you. I can imagine a day where if you look at kind of a dine and noon, that you actually have 5 or 6 sub clubs underneath your club because they're all doing different things with different interests, but it's all part of the big machine. So if you imagine you have an amazing speaker, you have all these people you can invite to do it. Or if you need, so our club, number 9, we never have enough volunteers to do anything. We have the money, but we don't have the people. So creating these sub clubs means that we want to invite people into our club that maybe can't pay the dues that we have to pay, which are probably one of the highest in our district, but they can access our club through the sub clubs, and then we get 1 million volunteers to help us do that. So that's the thought behind it. So I know that was a super fast idea. Oh, you're so welcome, Guy. So that's a super fast kind of knowledge about sub clubs. Right now, for the clubs that are going through it, we're literally going step by step of how you have to prepare, kind of what you do to launch, and then what you do after launch. And we're all going through it together so that we have kind of some support there as well. But that is sub clubs in a snapshot. And so the thought about that was it's probably the fastest way to grow your club, because if you think about it, you start a sub club with 10 or 20 new members, and you are just increasing your club exponentially. And I have some smaller clubs that say, well, we're a small club. That's not practical for us. We can't do that. And I would say, oh, yes, you can, because if your club is shrinking, oh, thank you, Mike. Yay. And if your club is shrinking, Mike also said he wants to be involved in this as well. So if your club is shrinking and you're a smaller club, then if you think about it, well, then what's your future? Are you going to continue to shrink more? Whereas again, what you're trying to do is get one member from your existing club to say, I probably wouldn't come to this club. I can't do it anymore because I can only have flexibility in the evenings, or I have these other interests. Again, if you can have them help you start kind of the new part of the club, then it just grows exponentially. So this model works whether you're a tiny club or a large club. And in Iowa, some of the smallest clubs have been the ones that have been most successful with actually growing these sub clubs as well. So yeah. So any thoughts or reactions or anything else you wanted to chat about? Because I'm sorry, I feel like I've just chatted at you, but I'm super excited about this because I do think it is the solution to creating new and cleverly. And I wouldn't explain this to your club when you're doing it, but cleverly, I think it's the way that we actually change for the future of Rotary without interrupting the past Rotary, because you're kind of combining them together. Instead of, for many years in my club, we've been told to change by kind of Rotary International, because again, they're always trying to figure out ideas about how to improve. And so we're trying to change our existing clubs, which has alienated the people who are already in them. And it's no wonder we have attrition. And so again, it's just a clever way of adding new without ruining what you already have, which I think is really great.
So Sharon, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Inez Bergquist from Egan Kickstart. So in other words, the sub clubs, just sort of in a nutshell, is that they're a different interest club. They have a different due structure, but they are counted as part of your club. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yep, you've got it exactly, that they are an interest or a different time within your thing. But I always say again, try and keep your dues fairly similar to your club. On my last sub club little talk, I had 2 clubs which will remain nameless that talked about the difficulty or the worry about charging dues. Like, what's the value? What can we really charge people? So I have one of the best speakers in the world on knowing your value and knowing what to charge for that's going to speak to that group. So I'm organizing that with them right now so that we can bring a little bit of kind of corporate training into how do we define our value? How do we charge for things? Because you know what, we should all probably be charging more, because I can tell you Rotary absolutely changed my life. I have one of the most successful women-owned investment firms in Minnesota and Florida. And you know what? I only did it because of Rotary. They taught me public speaking. They taught me leadership. They opened up the community to me. And so, I mean, it's resulted in an absolute change in my life. And I wouldn't have that if it wasn't for Rotary. So technically, I should have paid double or triple for Rotary for what I was able to gain from it. So I'm excited in bringing some of those speakers to our groups to give people more optimism and not to be so shy about actually charging and showing the value that we have. So, but it's 8:30 and I think you finish at 8:30, don't you, Alexa? I'm such a chatty Kathy. I apologize for that. So I see. So Mike and Corey, we're going to add you to that meeting as well. Thank you so much for that. And you can have an idea in development or just be curious. And then we'll carry everybody along. And then my hope is I'm squeezing people for real action now in the next 5 months so that we really get moving as well. So yay. So any final thoughts from everybody? But thank you so much for turning up and I can't wait to see your clubs flourish under your year. And I hope you have the best years ever as president. Like truly, make it your own, do crazy things. I had a theme like every single month in my club. So we did crazy things. I made my secretary dress up and wear a lot of funny things to entertain people. Oh, and the other thing I did to my club is I told them they were under British rule. So I changed. We didn't have chicken. We had fish and chips. And I bought wigs for all of the attorneys to wear because now they were part of British rule. And so we had a lot of fun. So don't be shy to really kind of rule your clubs and bring kind of what's really important to you to your club and celebrate often. So. And Kurt, did you have anything? I saw you came off mute or you're just smiling.
I'm just smiling. Thank you.
All right, super. Well, unless anybody has any questions, I won't hold you up anymore. But I'm super excited. I'm so jealous of Mark. I told Mark he's going to have to remove me at the end of this year because I really love this job and I hate to hand it over. But he is the nicest guy in the whole universe. And you guys are going to have so much fun with him. And he's so supportive and nice that, you're really going to have, really great luck. And Sam follows him. And so tell the people that follow you that, Sam is a consummate businessman. He's done amazing things in his corporate life. And so it's going to be just a wonderful couple of years. Okay. Well, enjoy. For our lunch people, go back to bed, have a bit more sleep, and tell Mark you had fun with me, and invite me back anytime you like. And I'm not going to go away, so if you need your help during your year, I'm so happy to come and help you as well.
Thank you, Sharon.